video so that we're ready when we want to start.
Okay, you good?
Yep.
Okay, we'll call to order the regular planning commission meeting for Wednesday, May 1st, 2024. Roll call.
Chuck Howard,
Yes.
Don Reimer,
Here, yes.
Ursula Cruzaleggy, Ken Slaymaker,
Here.
Jefferson Litch, Katie Maxwell. Chair Cindy Olson.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, approval of the agenda as presented. First and second, please. Okay. Kitty, a second?
I'll
Done?
second
All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
it. Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Approval of the minutes of April 3rd, 2024. I did not see anything.
I wasn't here, but I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
Hey, any corrections? Did somebody notice? Nope. Wonder. Okay. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, say yay.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Gosh, we're going right through this. Any conflict of interest from the commission? Okay, none noted. We do an open public comment period, which is right now where if somebody from the public wants to come up and bring something to our attention or have a statement at this point, they can come up for public comment. Is there anybody that so wishes? It's not for stuff that's on the agenda. Nope. Okay, we'll move on. Staff update.
Sure, yeah, I just have a couple of things today. You'd see at the April meeting, we had looked at a couple of things. The first was the visitor center rezoning that was approved by council on April 22nd. The other one was the CUP for ABA rafting and employee camping. That was taken to council on Monday, and that was ultimately approved with all of the conditions that we'd imposed here.
So that's on first reading. It has to go for second reading?
No, that was second reading.
That was
First
second,
reading was
okay.
back early April, and then second reading was
Okay.
Monday. So
Okay,
that's
right.
approved. They obviously have a number of conditions they need to meet now before they can start to operate, but that just happened.
Okay, that's good.
A couple of just kind of notes in the community. The annual cleanup day is happening on May 18th. It's along with the Rotary Club, and it's kind of a whole county effort. So if anyone's interested in that, bring your things to the First Bank building that's turning into the police department, because that's where dumpsters would be. We're also having a kind of spring festival this year called Furlings Fest. I don't know if anyone's heard about that. It'll be June 8th. Steve from Tommyknockers is kind of heading up the effort. It's essentially like an Oktoberfest, but in the spring, and all of the proceeds will go towards like animal nonprofits like Charlie's Place and the like, and then some other community nonprofits. Very dog focused. So I think we have a couple of flyers here. If anyone wants one after, I'll have them. And the last one is just an update on Virginia Canyon Mountain Park. The work continues on those trails, including that emergency access trail that we had discussed previously. The first trails are for downhill bike access are expected to open in the next month or so. So that's coming pretty soon. And yeah, work just continues on some preservation stuff, updating guidelines and the like. So kind of, you might see that before long. And nothing else from me at the moment, unless anyone else here, Wonder or Nick.
On the, that one there,
Yeah,
are they doing it outside?
yeah,
On Main
so
Street?
it'll kind of be the first event that uses the CODA, the like shared alcohol open area, and it'll be just after we kind of turn it back into the marketplace for the spring. So it'll be on the Minor Street, and it will also activate Idaho Mall alley behind the buildings. And they mentioned things like dog sledding, but with like rollers and things like that, so it should be kind of cool.
That was June 8th.
Yeah, June 8th, which is Saturday, it's like 11 to 6-ish, just on into downtown. You're welcome to come in, there's a few more chairs we can in there.
So kicks off the summer while it's still quiet season, to get some activity going before.
That's,
Seasons.
that I think is the idea, the county is, or the city is a sponsor as well of the events, and it's just after all of the flowers are installed, so it'd be beautiful. So, yeah, kind of still pre-summer kickoff. Yeah,
Okay.
that's it for me.
Anybody have any questions? No? Update? Okay,
Cindy, can I mention that I did receive an email of a public comment for the hearing that's gonna be remote. So Dylan has a contact, so just know that there is somebody gonna be online to make comment.
under
during
the
hearing.
public comment section, okay. Okay, at this point, we will announce, well, we're announcing a public hearing to be held tonight. It's a request for the amendments to the approved final development plan for the Block 57, the former Gold Digger Field mixed use project. And we'll start it at 6:07 PM. We'll start with the staff report, then the applicant, and then public comment. Did you want public comment for them to sign up if anybody has public comment?
No, because the sign up sheet is for non-agenda items.
Okay,
Yeah, specific.
and then people are limited to 3 minutes. State your name, address, and the clerk will swear you in. Okay, we'll start with the staff report.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I just kind of have a PowerPoint with some things up for anyone who's online. And, you know, you can't really see it that well, given that it's on a small screen. But, okay, so, and I'll just come up here for the formality of it. All right, so as was mentioned, this is a request for amendments to the approved final development plan for the Gold Digger Field Block 57 mixed use project. The original FDP was approved in April of 2022 by council. And so to clarify kind of what's being reviewed tonight, that approval is still valid. There's 4 proposed changes to that approved FDP, and if ultimately they were denied, the original FDP would still be valid, but these changes would update that if approved. And the other note, since we've got a lot of folks in the room, is that after planning commission, it will go to city council, which will be on May 13th. So there's 4 proposed, and this is kind of just an overview for context. You can see this is kind of as approved, a diagram. There's 3 buildings, up to 120 units, ranging from studios to 4-bedroom units. There's parking. The requirement for parking on site was 172, and the initial proposal had 174 spaces. So there's 4 proposed updates. The first is removal of 16 exterior doors on buildings 1 and 2, which are kind of shown on the left, those 2 orange bubbles. That would also involve removal of those exterior doors and associated paving, which would be replaced with just green space and landscaping. The second would be removal of the parking lot with access off of Minor Street. That currently has 10 spaces, including 2 ADA spaces. This would be reallocated elsewhere on the property, and this would also be green space. The third is removal of the adjacent walkway to that. If the parking lot's removed, the idea is you don't really need that walkway. There's several other walkways through the site and to the site. And the fourth is a revised trash enclosure plan for the property. So I will go through each of these. The criteria for approval is that final development plans conform to all use and development standards of the municipal code, as well as our standards and specifications for design and the plan development. The first one, as I mentioned, was the removal of doors on the south facade of building 1 and 2. This is the original approved floor plan. Again, you can't really see it that great, but it was in the packet. You can see there's an internal hallway that provides internal secured access to those units. And then there's external on the south side, external doors to access directly the parking lot. And the proposal is to remove those doors and replace them with egress windows. You can kind of see the change to the facade here. The doors at the top was originally approved, the red doors. You see on the bottom, the proposed change, which would be egress windows instead. The idea behind that is several things. One of the main important ones is for the studio units on the kind of east of building 1, and I don't have building 2 here, but you know, they're only about 400 square feet. Removal of those doors would do a good job of kind of maximizing the space internal. You know, so staff reviewed this against our standards. We find that with respect to the facade, it still meets building code requirements for access. It also, you can see there's still varying eaves and materials and delineations of the building, which were important notes during the original FDP approval. So staff believes and the other benefit in some ways would be a reduction in impervious surfaces, so there's more kind of green area. That they already met their impervious surface count, so that's kind of a negligible change as far as requirements go, but that would be one benefit. Number 2, and this is just building 2, you see they have slightly different facade designs. Change 2 and 3 go in concert. It's removal of that minor street access parking lot and replacement with just vegetation, essentially landscape vegetation, green space, informal green space, I guess. So this was approved with the initial on the left. It was a parking lot with access off of Minor Street, approximately it's 10 spaces. When the applicant was finalizing civil design, they realized that the existing grades that would be needed to access this lot wouldn't work to meet code requirements. It would also require a 9-foot tall tiered retaining wall, which has costs associated. It also has aesthetic implications. So what the applicant is proposing is to remove that parking lot completely and replace it with spots elsewhere on the lot. The parking table requirement, just for reference, what's required is 174. What's proposed is 100, or required is 172. Proposed is 174. The ultimate reduction would be 1 space, but they're still providing more than is required per our parking requirements in the code. The other note is that 6 ADA spaces were originally planned. Those 6 spaces will remain with the new parking layouts. So staff, the review kind of is, they're still meeting their parking. It eliminates an access into the property, which, kind of has negligible, in my opinion, staff's opinion, negligible impacts to ingress and egress, but it would be slightly fewer places where people would turn on to Minor Street. The walkway is associated with this. It cuts, between building 2 and the lot. is proposed for elimination. Staff doesn't feel that there's significant change with that, given that there are several other ways to access the site through the middle, through the east, to the west. So staff doesn't find issue with that. The final modification is to the trash enclosure plan. Seems to be relatively minor. These aren't perfect one-to-one comparisons, but the original proposal was for 2 smaller trash enclosures. The new proposal is for 1 larger enclosure at kind of the central location between building 1 and 2, or building 2 and 3 rather. The upside to this is that it's much easier to get trash collection vehicles in and remove them, the trash and deal with all of that. And it also allowed for the reallocation of parking elsewhere where those enclosures were going to be. The downside, I suppose, is that the trash enclosure will be farther from building 1, but when you look at the difference in walking, it's probably, building 2 is approximately, I might not have written it in here, but it's about 150 feet. So at maximum, folks would probably be walking 150 to 200 feet to the dumpster instead of 50 feet or something to that effect. So those are the 4 proposed changes. Staff finds that they continue to meet municipal code, the plan development, zoning for the property, and our standards and specifications for design and construction. And as a result, recommends approval of these 4 changes. We do have 2 members of the development team here. I don't think they have a presentation plan per se, but I'm happy to answer questions, and I think they are as well, about the project or changes or updates or the like. So that's it for me.
Any questions? What, the 1 parking lot, what are they putting there instead? Green space or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
instead of a parking lot, it will be just essentially grass, I believe, and other minor landscaping. So and it kind of eliminates a lot of the grading work that would have been necessary.
And that 1 access off of Minor Street, which is a good thing. Okay.
It probably also, I guess, from neighboring properties on the east is like, now there's a little bit more open space between them and the development rather than a parking lot, which seems potentially positive for those neighbors.
Mhm. Okay, did the applicant want to present?
No, I think we're good. We appreciate you guys' consideration. Most of these changes were just in keeping with, when you, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just
Rob-
gonna say, if you
sorry,
wanna keep talking, go
Okay,
there.
Rob
and let's-
McKenzie, and I'm with 4 Points Funding, the development
Can
team.
you give me your address for the record, please?
Yes, it's 1 Brookhaven Trail, Littleton, Colorado 80123.
Can you please raise your right hand for me?
Yes,
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, in between the time you put these plans together and you finalize everything, and you put construction documents together, it's like, why were we doing this? Why are we doing this? So it's really just, nothing here was designed to fool anyone or make a project worse. It was really just, as Dylan mentioned, the biggest thing is probably the removal of those doors. A lot of those are in pretty small units. So when you have an entry door on one side and then another entry door on the other, it's a safety issue, but it also just kind of hurts the layout of the unit a little bit. So that was really putting a window there. I think it still makes it look nice from the outside, but it really was more just, it made a lot of sense in the unit type. And then the other changes are pretty minimal. So that's about all we have. We're happy to answer any questions that anyone has, obviously.
I didn't
Thank
have
you.
any. Nope. Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to public comment.
The person who sent an email in is here.
Okay, start with that one.
And I'm going to, it looks at Jenna, and I will click allow to talk. And so Jenna, if you'd like to give a comment, feel free to unmute and you'll be able to.
I need to.
Start with her name and address, yeah.
And we can always circle back kind of at the end of public comment if Jenna doesn't mute in a second or two.
No,
Yeah, well, Jenna, if you do want to give public comment, we'll circle back after anyone who's here in person gives comments, so.
okay, if she's there, we can take her right away, or she's not,
Well, she's still
Responding,
muted,
okay.
I don't
Telling
see
me
her.
she needs access.
okay, did we have public comment
I'll try to work on that. Let's see.
from the audience? You guys just came to listen, no public comment?
Yeah,
Okay, you have to go
Yeah,
to the
please.
podium.
If you come up and then can you give me your name and address for the record, please?
Paula Deeds, 209 10th Avenue.
Can you please raise your right hand?
Sure.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am, great, go ahead. A couple of things, no shame in saying I'm very angry about this project. I have been very vocal on that from day one. It's going to take my property value down tremendously. There's been real no care or consideration, and the design does not fit our town. But with that being said, I want to make sure that 4 Points is being held to the same noise ordinance standards that are required, and that they are not given any additional construction rights for noise ordinance. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. based on Denver and Colorado law. Utility disruptions. If there are going to be any utility disruptions, we need to be forewarned. I work from home. I work a very busy schedule from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. most times. Utility disruptions would be huge. A plan pull from Georgetown has shown that they are going to alter my property. I have yet to been given any formal notice of this, but the plans drawn out show that part of my flower beds are being removed. If they're going to be removed based on those drawn plans, I need to be informed because the plans that were approved for the addition on my property included that additional property line. So I do see that 4 Points is taking it out. Not only that, but a proposed construction worker told me more about it. So I want to watch them with what they say. Those are my comments and concerns, along with the fact that not enough parking spaces. The traffic study was done in the middle of COVID during the Glenwood Canyon fire enclosure. So sure, that wasn't listed as limitations, even though it should have been. That's about all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hello,
Hello.
can you please state your name and address for the record?
Eric Dietz, 209
You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Like you said, I'm against it too, but, on this additional parking, which actually is not a bad thing to get rid of, it looks pretty ugly on there. However, where are they getting the additional parking, and is there an elevator in this building? I know it's 3 stories, right? Is there an elevator?
No elevator is proposed.
So you get rid of, so the people on the top 2 stories, are we expecting them to walk from the bottom up, or are they just gonna park on the road? Which definitely does not have enough parking, it's really not widening that road enough to even cover the traffic that's gonna come through. There's no way there's 2 people, or there's 2 levels that somebody's gonna walk from down to up. They're gonna try to park on the road, so it's just gonna take and all parking from Minor Street all the way up to Colorado is just gonna be taken up by these apartments. Because there is no way that they're parking down below. And you have 4 units, we have, what, 1.2, I think it was, parking spaces per unit or something. So that means we have areas that have 4 people in them. And it's not gonna be families. Families aren't gonna be able to afford this. So it's gonna be individual people living in those, and all 4 of those people are gonna have cars. So this parking thing is just a fantasy. I mean, there is just no way that there is enough parking for this. I know it's probably by regs or whatever, but I'm just seeing that it's just gonna be a mess. That road already, right now, you can't really pass somebody on that road. You have to pull over, let them go by, and then go by them. I mean, I've lived on that, for almost 20 years now. So I know it, and they're not making it any wider. So now you're gonna have all this traffic, and everybody's gonna be parking up top. They're not gonna park down below. Again, the traffic report is a joke. We know how this town is during ski season, during, this town just gets insane. And they did the traffic report during COVID. I mean, that traffic report should be done. 2, trying to find I know they did testing on the football field. We can't find that. It's in Gilpin County somewhere. And even when you go to that website to finally find it, which took forever to find it in Gilpin County, you still can't pull it up. It doesn't pull up. It's corrupted or something. So it'd be nice to see that report and see what that came up. It just feels like stuff is trying to be hidden here. And it's just frustrating. It really is. But I definitely, that parking lot, that 10 spaces is ugly, but I guarantee nobody's walking up 3 flights. Sorry, people are just not gonna do it. So it's just gonna be, that parking is not gonna be down below, it's gonna be all over the street. And there's just not enough parking as it is. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the audience? No? Is the other one on?
She is active. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, name is Jenna Billig and address is 904 Minor Street.
I can't see you, but will you raise your right hand?
Yes,
Do you
it is
swear-
raised.
Okay, do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, it is. I will admit that I agree that this town needs more housing for people. However, my concerns lie pretty deep in, one, when I found out from Eric and Paula a few nights ago about the proposals of their yard and wall and gardens being taken away. It really opened up my eyes to the fact that what else are they going to take? When you kind of follow that line down the road, are all of us going to just have people coming in and taking out our front yards? And then on top of that, my property taxes skyrocketed this year. I purposefully moved off of Colorado Boulevard to 9th and Minor to have a place to park my vehicle because I work odd hours and I come home at various times of the night. I leave early in the morning and I was sick and tired of walking a block or 2 down the road to get to my vehicle. So I agree with this fact that there is not proper parking for this. And if I run into that issue again, living at 9th and Minor, and people are parking in front of the house that I am a taxpayer, that my property taxes skyrocketed for, just so they can have easy access through their front door, that is now blocking, when I bought this home, quote unquote, mountain views, that's now gone. Plus, all my south-facing sunlight into my yard by these properties is gone, and I can't even park at my house. So what kind of resale value do I now have for my property as a taxpayer in this town? I was initially, what I had heard, what was going in across the street from this house was going to be townhomes. Well, that was a rumor, because I said, well, some nice townhomes with other taxpayers in this community would be beneficial. But instead, we have 120 apartment units with inadequate parking, poor access into them, that are going to be decreasing the value of my home, but I don't see my taxes decreasing. I see myself paying for all this. I see myself having to pay for their green space. Who is taking care of this green space? Who is going to be taking care of these sidewalks? Because I certainly did not sign up for someone to put a sidewalk in front of my front yard that I have to maintain. I'm sorry, I just did not. If I have to pay more for property taxes, this all needs to be taken into consideration and all of this needs to be maintained. We're putting all these units in for people who are not paying taxes to this community. And I just don't think that's appropriate for me to lose the value of my home and the access to my home for people who are going to just have apartments. The parking is not adequate on Minor Street. I agree with what Eric said. People are not going to park in that back and lug their groceries all the way around. They are going to park in front of my home. They're going to park where I park currently, and they're going to walk directly into their front door. Again, I bought my house. I worked hard. I got to this point, and now that is going to be taken away from me. That is all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? Nope. Nobody else online? Okay, now we'll go to commissioners.
I would offer the applicant a chance to respond to the public comments if
Okay.
the applicant wants to.
Would the applicant like to respond?
Let's go. You would all. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Kyle Overketter, 102 Lakeside Drive, Assault, Colorado, 81621.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I think we hear a lot of the comments, and as part of what we're trying to do in the community, we're having a pre-construction meeting. We sent public notice along with the mailer for this on May 15th at 5 o'clock. So it's at the rec center. We have a room reserved there. We'll give a presentation more about the construction plans and so forth. So I think happy to have people show up there and kind of can dive into it more of some of the things that are ongoing on Minor Street and some of the things that people have concerns about. So I think that's kind of probably where we can get into some of the more details about construction.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to commissioners. Any questions for staff or the applicant?
I have a question for staff or maybe also for applicant. Is it true that some of the project involves other folks' private property? They mentioned walls, stuff like that, but over other property lines, is that correct?
Not that I know of in this particular amendment to.
Of course, not in this amendment, but in general, I mean. I know
Well,
it's
there-
maybe not relevant to this, but I'm just curious about that. And if you don't know off the top of your head, I understand.
There's a number of road improvements broadly to Minor Street that were negotiated as part of the project, which includes widening the road to minimum road standards for the classification, I guess, of what the road is. And part of that would be, as Jenna mentioned, sidewalks to kind of access along Minor Street, the community at large, I suppose. So there are public improvements. Excuse me. I wasn't obviously here two or so years ago when it was approved, so I don't have all of the particular details, I guess, of where the limits off the top of my head are of those improvements, but that's what I have to say, I guess.
Thanks, Ellen. I know that's not really exactly part of this amendment in front of us, but I was just curious since they mentioned it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So is there indeed gonna be, like your flower beds are gonna be cut back? Is that part of it? Or are they gonna widen the road by widening the part on the development side and berming it maybe and putting the walls and widening it towards the highway? That would make more sense.
I would think those details are in the final development plan that's already been approved and addressed, which I can see where Dylan wouldn't know that now. I can't say I remember when we were doing it, but I would think right away and different things like that have been addressed. But those would be good questions at that community meeting, which would give you guys the opportunity to maybe have the answers for some of them.
And I think like Eric's garage, if you put a sidewalk there, there'll be no more way to get in the garage. The sidewalk will be up to the garage doors, basically.
Well, thanks, Cindy. That's a good point that you made, and I apologize for bringing something.
Oh,
on
no, I
topic
think
up,
it's good
but,
to bring it up.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good opportunity where with them being able to hear this, because, I mean, we passed all this how long ago? To say that we all remember, and no, I don't remember if it is or not. And I think they're very valid things to be asking, and maybe they weren't asked at that time or involved in it, but
And
no, I
anywhere,
think it's good to bring it up.
anywhere where there is an existing access onto private property certainly would have curb cuts. I don't think, you know, the approved plans certainly show that as well. So where there's sidewalk and those portions, there would be curb cuts as part of those public improvements. So you can still access the garage.
I don't recall, sorry to speak out of turn, but I don't recall any property removal in previous blueprints.
I don't think there's any plan to remove any property. I mean, the road widening is all, for the most part, happening on our site, so we're building up the soil. I think,
Yeah.
part of the issue is the sidewalk. And I don't know what the updated survey says, you know, a lot of this is the city. The last thing we want to do is touch it on property. And upset neighbors, it's the last thing we want to do. So if, you know, the sidewalk goes away on that side, we're indifferent. If, yeah, that was more of a city requirement to have kind of pedestrian access on both sides, but you know,
Sure, well, the city is certainly planning on ensuring that the improvements that were approved back in April of 2022 are still constructed within the city right of way. Right, which if you look at like properties, like surveys of right of way and the like for this property, for example, city right of way right now, you know, and this isn't precise, but it's at least partially down the hill. And on the other side of the street, you know, there's variation, of course, between where there's current fencing and retaining walls and the like. Obviously, that's on previously approved final development plans. So these obviously aren't relevant to the current application, but I'm happy to provide the approved plans to anyone who wants them in hard copy form electronically. You know, we have all of these. They're a big file, but certainly happy to provide them. My card's out there. I'll give it to everyone after the meeting. Bill Graves is my
Is
name.
the plan we got from Georgetown not accurate?
Well, I don't know what the plan
Because we
from Georgetown is.
Going through my flower beds and my garage. That was from Georgetown, for
Well,
the plans.
I mean,
I'm just
I
asking.
guess, well, my only response to that would be, like, if you don't have them here, I don't know what they are. So if you send those to me as well, we can obviously compare them to what was approved at the meeting. So I don't know if it was the approved final development plan or plan development or a survey of the property or what precisely it is. But like I said, I'm certainly happy to talk after the meeting and or in the future, you know, send me an email or a phone call. And, you know, like I said, was not the city planner when this was originally approved, but I've, you know, reviewed these plans now about 50 times, but I don't have precise details. So,
You want to ask a question?
well, I mean,
That's fine.
What is the setback, on the sidewalk for the building?
per building code or
Yeah.
per,
Yeah, program.
that I don't know. I'm not fortunately a building official, so I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
we can get that information.
Yeah,
of
I'm
course.
just curious, because we're like 5 feet from the sidewalk on this thing, I mean, it is just. Big stressful, but, I was just curious.
Sure, well, and I'm happy to get any information from anyone who has questions. So I can grab some of my cards from the front desk and, again,
Okay, commissioners, any other questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing at 6:40 PM. I'll ask for a motion in a second, and then we can do discussion. So, do we have a motion?
Do you have a pre-motion motion there? Yeah, there we go. I recommend a motion to approval of the proposed amendments to the approved final development plan, FDP for blocks 57, former Gold Digger Field Mixed Use Project.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? Looks, commissioners? I don't have any questions. I think they've all been answered. No questions? Roll call?
I've got a little discussion. I think that these are all pretty minor, as some of the commenters mentioned. It's important for us to keep an eye on it as it goes forward. I'm sure, like anything, we'll make certain that, everybody plays by the rules fairly. It's my only point.
Good point. Okay, roll call?
Chuck Howard,
Yes.
Don Reimer,
Yes.
Kent Slingmaker,
Yes.
Katie Maxwell,
Yes.
Chair Cindy Olson.
Yes. Okay, we'll take a couple, well, we can adjourn the meeting. So we'll adjourn and then take a couple minutes so Dylan can get some cards for you guys. Thank you. And then we're having a work session if anybody wants to do that. Work session.
I want to.
You want to?
Yeah, I'll hang out.
Good.
It's not, but I can change it that way. We're having to send the slides out, but. I'll see if the,
That'd be great. Okay.
Snuck in here, nice to meet you. Yeah, you too. We have.
Yes. And that old makeup one.
See you later, you too.
Bye. I will see you soon. I'm gonna miss you.
I saw you on the minutes, the last one.
Well, wasn't just the last one, the
Oh,
one
okay.
before that, so I've only did this. So they brought up two alternates and.
Snowboarding.
Oh, sorry.
You know,
Put stuff on the couch. So thank you.
Yeah. Anytime, yeah, we just thank you.
And it's like the next day, I'm like, oh, great, and then the day after that, I'm like, I can't believe it.
We're not gonna take the
We have a,
It was fine.
we have a little one who already done that.
Nice.
So he puts the ground right, so he falls and like gets right back up.
Yeah.
Oh, inside?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's only so much.
How long you been there?
No, I mean, just for the sake of.
Right around the park.
I guess you.
Yeah.
That's still rented.
I mean, it's not gonna be
Yeah.
grading, they're all.
Participating.
And then the same way people that park on that.
Full in.
Full in, yeah.
Time doesn't matter.
That's true. It's true, I feel a little out for some
And
of these.
if they have to, then you get residential parking along the side.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
with that on all the
Yeah,
other
what we were
streets.
referring to.
Bunch of discussion.
I mean, parking lots are open, but I
When we saw.
So,
There'd be lots of our house. Lots of- Yeah,
This
same.
whole neighborhood's gonna
It's
get
very
Look
limited.
to see how
here.
There is no.
Change.
Right.
Okay, so I thought the parking lot was over here, but it's not. So nothing can do that.
Well, the drive lanes are very important.
Okay, so right over here.
It'll be the front entry.
It's-
Oh, no,
There's
this is
two
from
entrances to the main
Texas,
parking
so
lot.
like
One
getting
off the
involved there is
Yeah,
a lot
a
harder.
little bit bigger.
Yeah, quite a
We'll
bit.
make that one.
What do you think, Don? How many parking
Well,
lots?
it's
Yeah, we're gonna knock on the sector,
Yeah, a lot of this.
Well, he's saying the guy that was living there has 70
Yeah.
years around his-
We're relatively. The truck there.
So that you don't have to work session.
I haven't, yeah, it still wasn't at the last one, and this saw.
We're supposed to do them every, how many hours, every, how many days? Yeah, we let too much stuff sit around, yeah.
Oh, where's
Down
that?
it.
Yeah, terrible.
And you, and it is, they
Oh, yeah.
started forcing, and you can tell when it snows, when they try
Yeah,
to plow their own.
it's-
And this, the car that cuts it moved in 3 days, 4 days.
I remember when Donnie had his car there. And,
Okay. All right.
do you remember when they got on you about your trip? Oh, well, yeah, that was, that's when they changed the,
Yeah.
Now
So
they don't
Katie,
care.
what this was already approved and stuff like that, so it's a tough one when you get a change like this and the neighbors come
We'll
in.
see, that was what my
Because
thought was, and
We're
I don't
just
know a whole lot about the
amending a
project,
few
but
changes,
I
it's
kinda
not
thought
like
it was
we can
blocked
go
highways.
reinvent the wheel and change
Right.
everything again.
Well, for someone who just bought property.
Putting a fence along the highway.
Yeah, and it's one of those, anytime you buy a property, it's buyer beware, I mean,
You don't have to
anything.
do your research, this is probably, I heard about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
I got the grandmother's land park.
Everything.
It's been there all winter.
Well, did it move? That's breaking the city
You're part of the
ordinance.
town.
Yes, oh
There's
my
like
gosh.
We looked down at
really
before
pretty
backyard.
How do we
we
get
got
to the park?
Yeah.
That would block some of the noise for everyone.
So I can park one of them.
And regardless of the-
Yeah, it really wants to stop anybody, because we're not enforcing the codes of the journalists. That's how it goes.
Is, the current.
You know,
As I understand the parking permit, it's not.
No, we can go over that in the
Particular at.
pre-con meeting, I'll give you,
So
so
if I want to park my
the,
car.
the actual right
It's
of way,
registered
what you
on-
see
In
now.
front of his
is
house, you can.
Minor, we
And from the sound of it, you can leave it there for a
bunch of
month.
land to create
Yeah.
basically the lane
Maybe we.
and then
need
the sidewalk. That's now in the middle of the
to-
whole.
That's all.
So the whole
A
thing
tow
is
truck?
widened through.
A towing
Yeah,
pickup?
two-way with.
So what's timeline?
I think that's
Sidewalk,
72 hours.
Like 15 years ago.
You're supposed to, they should.
Well, then-
What,
What's timeline for breaking down all this?
I think they pulled a few of the permits is what I thought I heard, yeah.
Usually have 3 years, so that's the right period for work, so.
See, what happened is they, for some reason, Clear Creek County has gotten labeled as
I just don't
The
know a
whole-
whole lot about it in general. so I'm
all
just
the
trying to
land
get-
in Clear Creek
Know what's gonna
County
be
is
there. I knew that there was
contaminated.
gonna be an apartment.
And it's
you know, like a
mining,
house.
yeah, you've heard us talk about this, so what they're doing is they had to do pull samples and all that stuff. It's unrealistic, but they had to go through all those motions that's delayed
Anywhere.
everything. I mean, that's
Studio,
not
one
any
bedroom,
different
they
than
go
the grass in your yard or my yard or his yard, but that's what they were doing. And it really delayed everything for a
Okay,
good
yeah, I did hear
year,
about that.
doing those samples and stuff, which was kind of like, where the hell did that one come from? Yeah, EPA and different
I don't know
things.
how much it's gonna be.
I mean, our
to,
kids
like,
played football on that field and,
measure.
ate dirt and everything. And then it really got.
Yeah, it doesn't have to, like, we're not moving in there, I'm
Yeah.
just curious, like, who
It
might. be
really
moving in
got,
there.
No.
It's not turned up?
No,
No.
still streaming.
It got, I remember one time talking to the mayor and he was saying, you know, if you look at statistics and what's the longevity of life. Clear
That's
Creek
more money
County's
than
got one of the longest
people that work in
lifespans for people, but yet the soil's all contaminated. So it was one of those where, you know, but they had to go through the motions, all that stuff.
I mean, a lot of the mayor said Friday or Monday. Clear Creek County and Gilpin County, the two oldest counties in Colorado.
Oldest in terms of current age of residents?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it.
And I think there was just an article I read a couple days ago, it might have been on Nine News or something on their website about
Yeah.
the sampling in the state of soils and stuff. So it's kind of one of those things that's going on.
Important to do. Especially when there's been a lot of mining, so.
Yeah.
Good to meet you. Thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you.
You know, make sure we, make it as public as we can about what's happening.
What's your name?
And so the open hearings are-
Where do you live? Down the street, 904. Okay.
May 15th.
Oh, that's great.
Brad and Bridget's place? Yeah.
So is that your wife?
Yeah.
5 to 6, 30
Live
minutes.
music.
Can't make the meetings.
What's
Do
gonna be
you guys
happening?
want to
Call it.
Sounds like your situation. I have a preference.
Yeah.
It was nice. It's not too much of a pain.
I think why.
Now you're committed.
Well, yeah, we have 2 dogs and a 3-year-old.
Okay.
We can have it. Wing Fest on Saturday.
I read about the Wing Fest in the paper.
We went last year.
You still have the sound guard.
I love the idea, but I don't know if I could handle the tuning.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, there's enough.
So are we gonna stream that?
Yeah, I know, but like you have
Yeah,
two
we don't
wings on
take
the
it.
first stop, you're like, man,
During the work session.
we gotta get to the next stop quick.
There weren't that many
No,
people,
but
for such
yeah,
a
we
business, I
can
think
go
it's
ahead and
donation.
start.
Yeah.
Suggested donation for,
Yeah.
not rockets, but
Some savings for sure.
I forget the name, but yeah, it was fun.
I looked at it,
Sounds
like,
like.
you know, we get the current to the
Yeah.
office, and I was reading about it, that looked really cool.
Yeah.
We get the big
No,
mark
not
on
get my
it,
water.
so maybe I could scratch
Yeah.
that itch.
Yeah.
I hope they get a good turnout.
Is it Clear Creek water? Yeah. Oh, and of course, the keys in the, is that what turned your head? No, no.
Okay.
Yeah, my age. Yeah.
So let's get started on the work session.
So where are they putting parking spaces? Oh, behind, like, sounds like all. of
This one
them.
Yeah, you did.
So.
Excuse me, you guys, we're gonna start our work session. You're fine, but just so we can start.
Thank you.
You can stay. Okay, so the first thing is the 3-mile plan.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll just, I had discovered, I might have mentioned this briefly last time, but I can't remember. Essentially, our 3-mile plan hasn't been updated since 2008. And state statute says we should at least review it and kind of re-adopt it annually. And I'm sure, you know, folks look at it all the time, and there hasn't been a huge need for changes, but there have been quite a lot of annexations over the last 5 years, especially with Mountain Park and with cemetery and with some of the other annexations around town. So, you know, I think partially to continue to meet state statute, but also partially just because we've annexed more things, and so and we have more infrastructure, updated water lines, more service, et cetera. Now is a good time to kind of review this plan, get an updated map, and then kind of come together to say, okay, where maybe are there more areas where annexation could occur? What are maybe the priorities in those areas? And so for tonight, I don't know how much discussion necessarily we'll have or not. The first step that I need to do is put together a new 3-mile map, which is kind of needs to be done regardless, but our GIS subscription expired when Jared left. And it's been kind of a headache getting it back. So as soon as that's back, which should be soon, because John's been working with the ArcGIS folks, I can then, you know, really I have to update a few maps, our zoning map to reflect a few of the things that have been rezoned and that have actually been annexed recently. But also then I can take that 3-mile boundary, and that's kind of a good starting point. So I'd expect to have that for next meeting, because once I have the software again, I can just, like, it takes a couple hours probably to work with the map and get it updated. And then after that, it's not necessarily it's it's not so much a like guidance document, so much as this is the on the ground sort of conditions in each of these zones. So, but with that, I guess I'd like to see what you all think. I think once we have the map and all that, we'll really kind of make sure it's.
How do you want to go about updating this? I read the thing where we can do it in-house, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
So you're feeling like you kind of like so far what's there, updated, add to it.
Yeah.
Is it, you want to do it by sections? I mean, we've done it so many different times. I can't believe it was that long ago we did it. That's
Yeah, it
10
just like,
meters.
this is the last time it was like officially adopted, which is February 2008. And, even this document says draft, it doesn't say like, but this is our adopted 3-mile plan. And so,
It seems like we've done it before.
well, and
Yeah.
I
What's,
think
yeah, what the heck, where's? Yeah, I'm sure you've seen all
that
this.
that's our comprehensive plan.
Right, right.
Which,
Okay, that's
really
maybe what I'm
reviewed, and we've done a couple other plans since this time. We've done our downtown master plan,
Okay.
which was adopted in 2022, I believe. And we've done a few other kind of specific area plans for different portions of the city. Part of it was the Colorado Boulevard reconstruction and the like. But this one, I'm sure it's been re-reviewed, but we've not really done an update to these areas. And so my thinking is, but I'm happy to go a different way, is rather than, because this was professionally done. And I think it does still set a pretty good foundation, but what it misses is a lot of the infrastructure improvements that have happened that kind of have extended our capacity potentially to grow if people in the community want to annex, because that's the other point is you'll never get annexed, your property won't get annexed to the city unless you request it.
So you're talking water and wastewater,
Right,
those updates.
those would be the big ones, I think probably, yeah, those would be the big ones. We haven't had a ton of transportation updates, I suppose, because that's pretty similar, it's not like our bus service goes to more outlying locations or anything like that, but.
But we have added the bus.
Yeah, like the
Since after
transportation,
2008.
yep,
Yeah,
the Mustang and Pegasus and stuff.
right.
And the local.
Yeah, I
And
do
the
think the
local one.
roundabout is a lot. So
Yeah.
that wasn't even around in 2008.
Mm-mm.
I wasn't sure if it was.
None of those were.
Okay, so see, that's another good
Mhm.
benefit potentially is, I know there's only a couple of stops kind of on the main corridor right now, but potentially, if, let's say, folks up 103 said, we really wanna we all wanna annex, maybe not ever, but let's say they did. That could be potentially accommodated to say, yeah, we'll have a bus that gets you to the school and beyond. And that's something that, of course, is not really contemplated here because it didn't exist at the
Or
time.
is it?
So,
So you wanna take this, do all the updates, and then would we go over it?
well, I think what I'd like to do at least to start is just create the new map. Just to say, okay, because like the current map, which actually for some reason is not included in our app in this, it has like an attachment insert, but it's not
Oh, that's
actually
page
included in the
5,
plan.
It says, here's where the map is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
which
you think of
is
the Sharpie?
come on, but we do have that map. I guess I forgot to put it in here, but it essentially shows a ring around the city
Yeah.
for 3 miles. And then from there, I think what was done in this was he created 7 areas that are kind of broken up either by watershed or like roads, like 103 area, like a west area, like an Up Virginia Canyon area, east of Hidden Valley sort of area, and then analyzed each, like what the current land use is in the county, which I can get that information relatively easily, what the transportation options are, which again is relatively easy to get together, and then and then there's like a summary that really talks about priorities and potential. And so I can create the map, to start, or if you'd rather, I could also start working on kind of just like summarizing what's changed in each of these areas. And then maybe where we all come back together is to talk about more of the summary portion with priorities and potential and that sort of thing. So I can kind of do it either way, of course.
Starting with a map makes sense to me, especially since there have been changes to the boundary in that time, so at least those areas. And then seeing if the area breakdown still makes sense, it probably does. But
Yeah, it may not. And so, yeah, maybe that would be a way to do it, is I say, I'm gonna work as hard as I can to get the map, the 3 mile map done for June. And then, we come together, we say, okay, should we change the areas around it all? Are there any initial priorities for the area? Then I could come back and start to, well, I could also by that point, hopefully have some of the initial research into what the transportation and land use and like is. And then it might not be till July that we have, July or August even, to have the kind of fully fleshed out discussion on the summary type portion of things, but
Yeah, I think once you know what some of the updates are, like transportation are included on that. Community services, fire protection, all that, but now 911 is out of our area. I mean,
Right.
those are probably
Yeah, that's true.
updated.
Housing,
Housing has,
we have added 30 units
yeah, been updated.
or more, 40 units.
Yeah, so that probably helps you knowing those things from, Jonathan would know all those though too.
yeah, I mean, even just in this discussion, like, I didn't realize that we didn't really have a roundabout at all at that time, so that is a major change. And then, the other big change is like the Floyd Hill project that's going on right now. It's $1 billion project that goes through Hidden Valley. I don't really know what those changes will be to potential annexation, but I have to imagine there's some aspects.
Well, I don't
we
even
should
know,
realize.
gosh, were the tunnels even complete then?
I think that was 2015 or 2016.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
those, gosh. Still can't believe we haven't done this. I think I confused this so much with the comp plan,
Right, well,
because
and
that
the
one's
comp
pretty
plan,
intense.
we do want to get started on comp plan in the near future, like the city had budgeted some amount to kind of kick off for this year, but truth be told, it's May already, and like to get someone in a contract to start even working on it, because and really what it probably needs to start with is kind of like an audit of what's there now, to say like, okay, what goals have already been achieved? What goals are no longer relevant? What goals are completely missing? Like the current comp plan doesn't really talk that much about housing. It doesn't really talk that much about transportation. It does, but the downtown plan especially talks a lot more about the housing and the transportation. And so I'm kind of wondering whether this 3 mile plan and maybe some other kind of minor plan updates could really help kick off like a much larger comprehensive planning effort that maybe starts closer to the end of this year and then really is in full force and takes a lot of our attention next year.
So the 3 mile plan is the existing, and then the comp plan is the existing plus future.
Yeah, I would think the comp plan is like the vision document of this is what we want the city to look like, here's our goals.
Right.
The
Okay.
3 mile plan is more like, this is the foundation of what's here and what could be done within a 3 mile area of the town if it is desired.
kind of the idea so that I suppose, is so that if a property owner does say, hey, I'd like to be annexed in, we're like ready to go, and here's the challenges and
Right.
the good things.
Yeah, and depending on, you might say, well, we have enough water lines in this area for some residential, but it's gonna be really hard to supply it to a major commercial operation, and someone then comes in and says, I wanna annex and do something super water intensive, and we say, we love the use, but it's gonna be challenging because we need to expand the infrastructure.
Right, and so keeping it updated lets you answer that right away.
Yeah, maybe there's like 3 miles away up Stanley Road, we could annex a casino, and then it's outside of the city.
That's what he's
In the city,
saying.
that's-
Did you hear him?
Yeah, yeah, but it doesn't impact the city, but it's in the city, you know, but then I think, you know, because it hasn't been done in a
Hidden
while,
Valley.
we could easily start doing it once a year, you know, and it's maybe just one meeting to say, hey, did we annex anything? If not, okay, no changes are needed. Hey, did we expand any water lines in Hidden Valley?
Yeah.
If not, no changes.
So it sounds like we can move forward with this one pretty fast because you
That's
can
what I
do a
think.
lot of it and do the map and stuff, so.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where, like, the comprehensive plan for reference, like, that's a big undertaking. If we
Yes.
decided, you know what, it doesn't need a major overhaul, it's just updates, refreshing goals, but otherwise it's good. Maybe that's something we could all do in-house. It would be a big lift, but if we say, you know what, we just wanna rewrite the whole thing, that's a huge process. And there is a lot of outreach with that, there's a lot of, public input and the like, because it really is a community document, whereas this 3 mile plan, talking to Carmen and Nick, we don't even technically have to adopt it with a public hearing, because it's just kind of a minor, it's almost procedural,
Yeah.
because we're supposed to do it.
So I would say next time you come back with this, come back with the map and then whatever changes. And we probably could just go through it and be done with it, like you said.
Yeah,
So no need to come back interim, like, he has the map, but just initial changes? Just wait
Because
till-
the 3
wait till the
mile is
whole thing-
pretty set in stone what the 3 mile
Makes
is.
Makes
It's,
sense to me.
yeah, it's not like we pick and choose, like, no, you're not. Yeah,
right, exactly. And again, we can't say, no, you can't, we'll never let these people annex, because there could be a scenario where, you know, something happens in 3 years and then, oh yeah, let's develop whatever, who knows, you know,
Right.
like we bought property recently, which may or may not have heard about, like up near the reservoir, like one of the 50-acre parcels up there. And that's kind of for water security, but you know, if in the future, we have plenty of water at the moment and the capacity is there, but let's say 20 years from now, we need to double the size of the reservoir, we now have that space. And so there's not really any proposal to annex up there, but let's say folks want to continue up the valley, eventually you get 10
More
miles up the
water,
road
yeah.
and then,
Or if there's like a climate change or something,
yeah, well,
water could get harder to get.
okay, so you have good direction on that?
yeah, I think that
Okay,
that's
cool.
fantastic. And I'll have something as soon as I can, if the mapping somehow goes awry, you know, it might be a little longer, but hopefully it's.
Did you get expired?
Yeah, it expired like a couple months before I came on, and I didn't need it until like a month ago, so I didn't know, and they're like, no, you gotta renew and all this, and it's a whole ordeal, so.
Yeah.
We don't have any of the same technology, like, you know, Jared had just a monitor, but that's been removed, that was removed when he left, so like, we don't even have access to the old. So we have all these files, like all the shape files for all the lots and all of the roads and all this, but we have no way to access it right now until we get our account back up. It's not an ideal thing, but at least it's just maps. Okay, well, that's great direction. And if anyone has anything else kind of outside of this meeting, just let me know as I move forward.
Hey, I do, you mentioned the comprehensive plan and perhaps minor adjustments in-house or perhaps a big to-do. Would it make sense to look at it relatively soon to even just make that decision of do we do the whole big thing or something small?
I think that's a good idea, and then the question becomes, do we think we have the tools or capacity to
Right.
kind of audit it ourselves? Or we can also potentially get grants to kind of do planning and auditing work for comprehensive plans from like DOLA. So, and that would take a lot, that would, you know, take longer, but then you have professionals from, you know, the planning world
It
looking
can
at it.
take a long time to do.
Yeah, when I was up in Summit, they did a code audit or a plan audit and it took like close to 6 months, and then the whole that's on top of an 18-month comprehensive plan process. They were also doing a code audit for housing and that took like 3 to 6 months as well, so they don't, you know, if we're doing it internally, we don't have any of the front end work of having to get grant funding and start to, you know, go through all the contracts and the like, but then it, you know, relies on staff and council and planning commission and the like to take a little time to see, you know, cross things off the list and determine how.
Have you read through the whole thing? No.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, that's my first thought is you have to become more familiar with it and see what's missing, you know, it's a new set of eyes on it and comparing it to other places you've worked in, what you're bringing into this and the long-term view here where that would be valuable input because it can get pretty costly, but then to go with the DOLA grants and stuff is great. And I think before we've even had students help with it and stuff. You
Right,
get
that's true.
college students that come in and help and do, so it can be, you can go into it and rewrite the whole thing, but
yeah.
it would be interesting to see your take on it first.
Well, and I did talk to Maria earlier this week, you know, who's our best and brightest fellow. And she was mentioning a desire to take on some more projects. So maybe that's something where, you know, if it works for all of you, maybe Maria and I start to look into it this month. And then for June, we might be able to at least come with some initial updates, sort of say, hey, we looked at these and it's looking like it's not in the.
That's a great idea. How long is she here?
She's here for 2 years.
Oh, nice.
I don't know exactly when she started.
So she's an intern for that works with the city right now.
Yeah, and she is a
he's talking about.
student in, I think, public policy at CU Denver. And yeah, I know John was a best and brightest fellow with Idaho Springs a
Mhm,
number of years ago and then
mhm.
stayed on, so,
I like that, the best and brightest.
yeah. I've never heard of it, but then, you know,
Uh-huh.
so I think that could work is if Maria and I kind of take the lead on maybe just an initial thing, then I can come back in June with an update on what we've done so far and then maybe get some more direction.
That's a great way to get it updated and then if it wants to get done even more, looking at when to apply for the DOLA grants and stuff, but to keep up with the pace and get it updated in-house if they felt that there's enough in there with her being able to help. I think is great. Cause what year is it on? Is this it?
17.
17?
Yeah, so normally comprehensive plans are anywhere between like 5 and 10 years.
Okay.
So I would say we're not necessarily to end of life, but, you know, John has mentioned this a few times, like there's been so much growth since 2017 and action on a lot of these items that, you know, he says maybe it's time to, you know, that's why they kind of started budgeting for it, is to say, we maybe
That's good.
achieved a lot quickly. And some of it are still in the works, you know, there's quite a lot about downtown improvements and parking garage and parking and definitely already working on that. It's a little slow, but it's in the process, you know, so. But there's definitely a lot of new goals and things of protecting historic character and neighborhood character while also making sure people can continue to live here affordably and all that, which it was a similar challenge with 4 Points, you know, these folks have lived here a long time and it's not ideal to get 120 new units, but it's balanced against, you know, folks who can't afford to live anywhere, so.
It's also as a resident, not nice to go to shops that can't staff people because nobody can afford to live here.
Right, yeah, it's not
It's a
an easy
balance.
solution, but it's certainly important balance to get right. So,
Okay, so you got good direction on that one too.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I wasn't even expecting that, so
Yeah.
that's nice.
Now the fun one,
Mhm.
which this is great, what got put together.
Yeah, I know you say fun and I really agree, like, given what's here, this is
Yeah,
exciting
it's
and fun.
like
It
everything
is.
we've talked about put into
Been a lot.
one place.
Well, that is what I was trying to achieve with this report. You know, obviously, it doesn't necessarily recommend a whole lot at this point, but since it's been a little while since everyone has talked about it, I was hoping this would kind of summarize discussions in the past with some updates. So like, for example, minimum occupancy standards, which I kind of mentioned in here. There's this new House bill that was passed that essentially says you can't regulate occupancy based on like family.
Yep.
And it has to be based on either fire code or building code or something to that effect. And, you know, like I had done some research before I kind of looked into that in more detail and to on like what other places are doing, like what does your normal occupancy look like for college dorms, for example, which is kind of similar to hot long-term occupancy in a hotel or a shared amenity thing. But, and they're mostly around 100 square feet per person on average, but if building code doesn't say 100 square feet, and I need to get a little more research into precisely what our codes say, but I think it's closer to 50 square feet per person. You know, you can't then say, well, you can only have 2 people in a 100 square foot room, or in a, you know, 100, if you had a 200 square foot room, it'd be great to say you can only have 2 people or something to have minimum square footage or whatever, but you can't really do that.
So you're saying, I read that thing on the new, how many people can live in a place. So you're saying we probably shouldn't do, if it's 200 square feet or a person per 100 square feet?
Well, I don't think we're permitted to do that, is my understanding from a brief conversation with Carmen. What we can do is tie it to like a state or federal standard, whether it's fire code, which Kelly has mentioned, he doesn't have a fire code minimum, or building code, which there's certainly building code standards. But I think they're relatively low for shared bedrooms. And so
But wouldn't we be better off stating that even?
I think so.
I do
you know.
too, just because you can take that hotel room and it's a difference if you put 3 people in there or 6 people in there. So if you do have, even if it's low, like you said, 50 per person, whatever the state or building code. So having that number would be good to know which
Yeah.
one.
Because at the very least, then we can tie it to whatever the highest standard is, if that was our wish. Comply with state law, but then also make sure that there's at least something on the books, so you couldn't put 10 people into a 100 square foot room, which I don't know that quite density is happening,
Let's say
but
6.
6 and 100, yeah. You know, I know some of the lodging options. I actually did an analysis just on like booking.com of the average size of rooms in all the hotels in town that I could find. It's kind of interesting, you know.
Yeah.
Some of them are actually pretty big, and others are quite small.
Yeah.
Potentially could cram with people.
So
Some
the
of them we
proposed-
have are pretty big, but there's 6 people in it, yeah.
Right.
The proposed licensing requirements does say compliance with the code and the building and fire code. So would that kind of cover that?
That probably would, yeah. It would just be important to put that in, and if there's anywhere else where we think like it's important to look at to see, you know, what really seems reasonable or for basic public health, safety, welfare, you know, to try to fit that in however we can would be positive, but it does kind of, so the one thing that also is kind of not necessarily what we want to achieve, but maybe should be looked at is our code currently states that families up to 5 unrelated people, and so you couldn't have 6 unrelated people living together, technically, and that might happen, but like technically that's what our code says, and the House bill might make it so we can't say that. So
I thought that, yeah, I think taking it out of there, because that's something like that's gonna pass, that they're
and the
gonna
House
say
bill
that.
was
I thought it was approved.
it is law now.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to do it as part of this in
Yep.
order to comply,
Yep.
but it is something that is maybe in some ways the opposite of what maybe would want to be achieved, because if you said, okay, well, building code says 50 people, 50 square feet per person. Right now, our code would say, okay, even if there's 800 square feet, you can only have 5 people in that space because it's who are unrelated. But now we'll have to eliminate that. So theoretically now you could get 16 people in that space.
Isn't that House bill though, that was focusing more on homes?
Well, these are homes.
No, single-family homes is what I mean.
Oh,
That's
these are
because
homes.
landlords, what they were doing is giving you leases that said you could have 5 people living there because you want to charge per person or however they're leasing it, and they had to be related. So now the state has stepped in and said, no, you can't tell them they all have to be related, so
Which is
that's,
fair.
yeah, which is totally fair. But it's kind of
Yeah,
isn't applicable to this. I think the intention of that, where it all started and now passed, but I could see where it could turn in and imply this.
right, because it does say single family dwelling.
Yeah,
It should, no, it says single
It
dwelling,
says single dwelling,
whatever that means.
yeah, it doesn't have the word family.
I would have to look to see if it's
but then,
defined.
See, I wonder if they took the word family out though, which would make sense because when you
Right.
use the word family, you're implying related again.
right, well, that's a
Through the
good,
house bill.
that's a good
It's a
thing
good
to look
point.
into, because I'm not sure what that means, but, the other question I have about hotels and motels specifically is we currently have 2 standards in place that are sort of relevant. The one is that if they don't have kitchen units, they're not considered dwelling units, like if there's no cooking facilities there. And so regulating those would have to be slightly different than any other thing that constitutes a dwelling unit, because these really aren't dwelling units. They're lodging rooms that don't have kitchens and so don't meet our definition. But then the other thing is currently our codes say that hotel or motel rooms can't be rented for more than 30 days, which is what, the
Right.
regulations also achieve. So there's, compliance issues with that, but I think the intent is to,
So we have to
Modify
come
that.
up with the definition. So dwelling units might be one, but I mean, to me, it's better to be consistent with other communities. So like, let's use Summit County as the example. I mean, because they all have hotel rooms and people are living in them. What are they called?
sure, yeah,
And then whether it's a dwelling unit, and we would have to add that into our definitions. I mean,
Right.
I think we are at that stage where we need to address all those things. And then I think where you in here said that they're not considered a motel hotel because they're not complying with the hotel motel license. But if you wanted to keep it looped up in one, what did you put? Hotel motel extended stay? But they have to, I like the idea of they have to contact the city, change their use during the winter months. It seems like this happens more in the winter months, but they're also doing, some of the places are doing both. They're doing
right,
hotel motel for the general public, and then they're also doing the housing. They're
Right.
doing the mixed use, which is fine.
yeah, I think that is, my opinion is that, if we have a registration or licensing process in place, then hotels and motel, like things that are currently approved as lodging would have to designate particular rooms and say, either my whole facility is gonna be now long, kind of extended stay or long-term shared amenity is a definition that a lot of places are using.
Okay.
Like they create a shared amenity housing definition for anything that's like individual sleeping rooms aren't considered dwelling units, I guess. So like if you did create a college dorm here, you could call it shared amenity housing because
I like
each
that.
place that people are staying in is not a dwelling unit, but as a whole, it has shared cooking facilities, so it kind of is this, and a hotel motel could theoretically be lumped into that because it is still people sharing facilities.
And I like that idea of combining them because it's a tough discussion because they are really similar. It's easy to go back and forth. I like the idea of combining them, especially because we often really talk about the future potential for a dorm style housing or something.
Yeah,
But
Well,
the
the-
extended stays is something that's happening now. So it's good to move them both forward, I guess.
Right, we're calling it the shared might be better than the extended stay because it does, like you said, it does both. Where extended stay, people get that in their head. You think of the extended stay hotels because
Well, call it
it's
what
like
you
an
want.
apartment that you're staying in.
Call it what you want, but I'm just glad that we're moving both sides forward, you know, any potential future things and the current situation at
Yes.
the
So if-
hotels.
You were saying you would want the property to designate which rooms, so they would have to submit that plan
I think
seasonally?
that's kind of what I was maybe thinking is it's almost like, it's obviously different than short-term rentals. It's like the opposite of short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Because instead of using a single family home as short-term, you're using a lodging room as long-term.
They're completely different, yeah. we
So
don't
they're
want
kind of the
to-
opposite, but maybe the registration licensing thing could be similar, where it's like annually, they say, hey, rooms 1 through 5, we want approved as extended stay or shared amenity, per this license. Then we could, you know, maybe say, okay, we need a floor plan of all these, we need life safety inspection and those sorts of things to make sure that those spaces are safe for occupancy long-term and meet code, but also potentially then we could get information about those rooms, you know, maybe we require like a lease agreement or something to that effect, maybe not, but that'd be something if we require licensing of individual rooms or a whole property, we'd be, and renewal on an annual basis, we'd have a little bit more control if we wanted that.
And you'd know what's going on at least, you know, because you hear the stories, because the one property is doing both. The 2 other properties are just doing the shared amenity during the winter months, and then they go back to doing half and half in the summer. And then you take the one on the east end of town, I don't know what you'd consider that one, that's more long-term, but it's, I don't know which one that would fall under, I'm not sure what the rooms are like and stuff, you know, thinking of the Blair, or if they've changed it pretty much all to apartments.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but it is a good point that we could, that if we require annual checks, we
Right.
don't run into a, you know, a worst case scenario where no one has visited that room in 6 months and there's, you know, hasn't been cared for and it's really bad living conditions, you know, that's probably the exception, but maybe it's not extremely far off in some cases, but
Or-
right now, we don't really have a good way unless you get a call for police
Exactly.
or something
There's no way to know.
to go into any of those spaces. And obviously, people deserve their privacy and all that as well. But, you know, I think in some ways, the point of this is making sure it's good for public health, safety and welfare for those residents as much as additional control.
But also a path towards compliance for the businesses, because, you know, and we've all talked about it, but yeah, we don't wanna just put new stuff down and they'll say, well, we won't do that anymore. It's much faster.
Right, well, and so a question on that would be, when it was originally discussed, like, because the proposed language that I put in this report was back from 2023, I think, or last time it was really before the like the hotels without unstaffed hotels was passed. It was like part of that discussion. Like, you know, in this, it talks about requirements for housekeeping, requirements for kitchen facilities on the premise and those sorts of things. For cooking facilities particularly, to Ken's point, maybe there's a solution where we put in maybe like a sunset period of a couple of years or something like that, where you say, listen, right now you have to have minimum building code standards, licensing, et cetera, and you need to provide cooking or something in 5 years. Within, like, you can only renew your licenses or something for a period of time. That might not work, but obviously it's a lot easier to comply with the basic building code and licensing stuff, more so than doing significant upgrades to your existing
I
facility.
think it's option A or option B, you have that or the communal kitchen,
Like you either have it in a room or a communal.
Yeah. is the way it is now.
Yeah, that's how it was proposed.
Right, and I think that's what you find in Summit County too. They don't take the hotels and put kitchens in them, because
Right,
they can't.
right,
You'd never meet the building codes or the fire codes.
right, but I wonder whether it would be beneficial to say, at the start, You just need to register, you need to meet these minimum building code requirements for occupancy and health and safety. You don't even need to provide a communal kitchen until X date to say, you know, you guys know this is coming, you have 2 years to do it or something like that.
I think the properties I know of have already done the communal kitchens.
Oh, okay, that's good.
But that's where, you know, to be honest with you, you've got 30 employees that live in these. Okay, so you know what they like and don't like. Maybe part of the communal kitchen though is where you can designate what has to be in it, like refrigerators, freezers, cooktop stoves, not just
Well, that's not what this says. though.
pads. No, I'm just saying, those are things that we can,
No, I mean, like
Changes.
earlier saying that the either or isn't what this currently says. I think a minute ago we kind of said, it says either or. It, not by my reading, in the licensing requirements, it says every unit must have
Oh, yeah, it
talks
does.
about the kitchen, and then it says you have to choose 3 of the 4 and one of them is a communal
yeah,
kitchen.
we
And
never.
we could adjust it, my
Yeah,
point
we
was just
never
that isn't
agreed
what
on
it
all that.
says.
I
Yeah,
think he's
right.
taking all the notes that were
Right.
out there and put it all
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, and it's a great point, I was just saying, it doesn't say either or as currently.
Right, and
I
that's
was
what I
just
kind
saying,
of mentioned.
If you
we could.
don't, that would be good to use, because that's something you do here is because that's where it's gonna be a little harder though, and I know this for a fact, for the property,
Mhm.
they can't put cook stoves. I'm having a hard time with that. Stoves in there because they can't meet fire codes in those, whether
For the
it's
individual.
sprinkler systems or something like that, so,
Mhm.
and I know they furnish the hot plates.
Right, well, and a
Um,
lot of, so like Steamboat Springs is a good example of a brand new thing that the city developed. They did a 32 unit, basically college dorm type thing, but it essentially has 16 units, 16 bedrooms on each floor. Each floor has a shared dorm style bathroom, you know, it has like women's and men's like shower stalls,
Like
bathrooms.
really
and
old
then-
dorms.
And then each one has like a full kitchen as well. And so like in that sense, it's brand new, but they even said like, we're not putting individual kitchenettes in, we're just gonna do one nice, well-equipped kitchen with minimum things. And it's for their like transit employees. And so I think long-term, maybe that's our goal for like, why we'd wanna put,
On a new build,
yeah, like the ability to define it in basic standards, so a new build could be built tomorrow if they wanted, but then also fit within what's feasible for these existing places.
I think what I mean by the and or is you take the existing facilities and hey, you're gonna use them as the shared living spaces, but you also have to either provide
Oh,
in each hotel room, whatever you wanna call them, or the community kitchen.
Right.
Yeah. there's-
Sure.
And
So-
there's also the potential of, like you said, having something like this for new builds, but grandfather. And having less stringent on existing building,
Yeah,
not to throw a whole nother hand grenade in.
that's true, you certainly could, or say like any new build from this point on. Some people, I know Breckenridge did with lighting, which is obviously different, but they said any new build or any new project going forward has to comply right now. Anyone else has to comply by 2025, and they passed that in 2010.
Yeah.
So they said like,
well,
even if your lights are out of compliance right now, you have 15 years to change those fixtures,
Well-
essentially. And maybe you don't want 15 years, but lighting is a much
Something
less
like that.
important issue. And so that's why I think they said, listen, people are probably gonna do a renovation in the next 15 years and it'll be fine, but you could certainly do something like that to make it a little to kind of expand how long folks have to get into compliance while still meeting certain standards right now.
right, yeah, I don't know if you have to make it that long, really. I think if they want the business, they're gonna wanna do it because it's to their advantage too. I mean, they're already doing it. I think there's a lot of compliance already with the ones we're talking about.
Well, the good news is that with the annual inspections, we get to say, we know that there's compliance or not.
Right.
So that's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah, but still, kind of defining, rather than defining, sounds like, rather than defining these 3 items have to be in each room, maybe it would be better to say, here's the basic facilities needed on the premise that are available to renters. And that even if it's communal. And so I don't know whether,
The communal on-site laundry. Storage. And I like the thing where no storage on the decks and stuff like that. Which, the one property I'm thinking about, I think within the lease agreements that we have, that with doing it, that happens already anyway, but to put it in this,
right,
yeah, why not? I mean, aesthetically, it's pleasing to the community also.
I just think if we do allow more of you can do a communal kitchen and not put anything in the rooms. Just do need to make sure that it really is well stocked and that it really is good and not just, I would put a hot plate in the corner of the lobby, you know?
and would
That's-
you want to then, like, do you all have any input on what those minimum facilities for a kitchen should be?
I kind of like it because it's, you know, if you're also trying to give the quality of life, I have to say that's one of the complaints I hear from
What
our
is?
employees,
That it's not
that they
well
don't
equipped.
have a cook stove in the communal area.
I think the definition in the every unit section is pretty good.
Okay,
If it, you know, I mean, you might need more if it's
Which one are
communal.
you looking at?
On the
Page 3.
yeah, page
Oh, yeah.
3,
Oh,
every unit, used for long-term occupancy must meet the following requirements, is the second one.
yeah, built-in cooktop, or stove unit. Hot plates, griddles, microwaves, or similar devices shall not be considered cooking appliances. 2 sinks, 1 for cooking and 1 for lavatory.
That doesn't apply
And
as
then,
much.
right, and then,
Well, it does because I know the place I go into, they've got a restroom there too.
In the communal kitchen?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
So,
never mind.
and I think that's common, you have to have,
That
I
makes
guess
a lot
in
of
your building codes, I think you have to have.
you
A sink.
probably.
You certainly still need a separate one. Maybe you need more of each thing in a communal, or maybe you don't, but those are pretty good definitions, I think.
Looks like
for
the only
kitchen.
one it doesn't include for the kitchen in this is whether, you know, like a refrigerator, which you think should probably be included.
Yes, I would say refrigerator. Lighting, ventilation is good. Occupancy limits, no.
And a couple of things would have to be removed from this language, such as the 24-hour desk staffing, given that we passed the ordinance for unstaffed hotels. I don't know
Okay.
that we could require that extended stay shared amenities have staff.
Oh, I think we could.
I guess we could, but then the question would be if someone's doing half extended stay and half short term. Like, I guess they wouldn't, I don't know, I mean, I
Under
guess,
the current, under the current, if they're just a short-term hotel, are they required to have that at this point?
well,
Cause I know we approved it for certain things, but
yeah, I guess it
was that a
is for.
specific
Yeah, it's,
type of
I think
hotel?
it's if you specifically get approved as an unstaffed hotel or motel and it's up to 8 units, I believe.
Yeah.
You can not have staff on site at all times, but for anything that's more than 8 units, you would still have to have, and anything that hasn't gotten approved as that would still have to have on-site staff. So I suppose we could, yeah,
we
require
just
it.
line it up the same way, I guess.
Yeah,
I think leave it required.
I think you could
Makes sense.
because the unstaffed hotel is so limited in the number of guests they can take that it wouldn't be,
sure, I see.
and it would be an unstaffed hotel per the zoning code is not a hotel, it's an unstaffed hotel. So I think as
Right.
long as you
And
include
it's
just
each
hotels.
hotel, not a combined property of 2 different locations. Each, how do you do it? Word it where
Well,
each,
it's just whatever is a hotel per their zoning designation or, you know, whatever they,
and the
whatever's
hotel
in
shared
the city's
amenity.
files. That's what they are, you know.
I see. Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. So it kind of seems to me that there's some updates that we need to do to the ordinance that we had written a couple of years ago, but we probably don't have to start from scratch. Like, we could probably just update the ordinance where this language that I highlighted was taken from, and potentially it would be able to be applied now. Where at least I could, next meeting, present that full ordinance with the kind of what's talked about tonight and say, here's what I thought maybe the red line could be, and then we could continue to red line it from there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty darn close, personally. I had another question.
Yeah.
The very last point in the italics, where it kind of has the exceptions. Just to make sure I'm on the same page, those are exceptions, so those are places, those are times or situations where someone could stay more than 30 days. But not have to adhere to any of this. Right. And that makes sense. The very last one, the specific business in its entity for the business purpose, what are some examples of that? I guess I have a question about what that one kind of means. Is that like the very end of the italics at top of page 4?
That's tough.
It's kind of split in half.
Because the first two make some sense to me, like there's an emergency and you need to house people at the church or a community center or something and that sort of thing, but.
Like, we had also just talked about this, and a family had just had their house burned down and had been staying in a hotel for quite a while, like right when we first started.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but yeah, the third one, I don't know, Nick, if you have a.
I think, maybe like a construction business that has people come into town and you buy 15 rooms for your 15 employees. I think that maybe would be it.
Would that be a loophole for like maybe not a loophole, excuse me, would that apply to like the rafting companies, so
I think it could.
They wanna put people in and hey, we got a contract with the hotel said it was fine for them to not provide any of this.
Right.
Yeah, it's very vague language, and if a rafting company or even a ski area tried to get that kind of carve out, it'd be tough to deny. I mean,
based on that anyway.
Business purpose, which requires extended temporary occupancy.
That seems written for the rafting companies and the ski lodges.
Yeah, or I mean, yeah, I agree with you. That's a tough one to.
That just might be worth addressing of what is our intent with this,
Yeah. So I think like I said, a construction thing, a construction company, I think that would fit and would make sense. But if that's fitting, then I think a ski area or a rafting company could.
No, that one, I mean, the only difference is like, obviously that happens every single year versus like, oh, I got a contract and because I couldn't, I'm like,
It's a good
like,
point.
let's say Habitat for Humanity, those 8 units, they're like, well, our staff all left and we had to hire some like contractors from Denver or Texas, let's say, and we need to house them for 3 months to finish the project. That's probably different than like a rafting company saying, well, every year I get 20 employees and every year I'm just gonna use this loophole. Like,
right. I mean, I agree with in intent, it's different, but as written, I don't see any difference.
Yeah.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
So on the part, a minimum of 3, so that's gotta be changed because you want the communal kitchen as a require, not one of the minimum of 3. The meeting area or conference rooms, a fitness center is unrealistic and a business center is unrealistic.
Yeah.
That's definitely worth looking at, but to bring back around to the point I was in the middle of a moment ago, Lindsay, excuse me, God. What do you think about that, the specific business? Do you think that that's worth looking at? Cindy?
On which one now?
The very last point, so
Just below.
kind of just below that one, where they're saying exceptions, where they're saying here's situations where they can stay longer than 30 days without having to adhere to all of these things, just like the current situation. What do you think about this?
I don't think we need to have any of those, do we?
Well,
It's an interesting point.
Well, you could get like your summer months, all of a sudden somebody walks in, they want to put everybody, all the CDOT workers in one of the hotels for the summer.
yeah, that would kind of fall into the, that third one, specific business entity. I think where the
Right.
first one is maybe beneficial is, like we said, if there's like an emergency where someone's house burns down, they should be able to rent a
Yeah.
unit for 60 days while it's rebuilt, but I don't know if maybe that was written in for a specific, like, I don't know if there's a state statute or something that requires it, because otherwise I would think maybe the first two make sense, but the third we want to remove.
I wonder if it's necessary at all, just kind of reading it operationally, because if you're requiring all of this stuff anyways, who's going to be monitoring the hotels that aren't doing this to make sure that their stays over 30 days or fall into these particular categories? I mean, the enforcement and monitoring of that would be
That's what I'm
very
thinking, the
difficult.
whole thing doesn't need to even be in there.
I see, so maybe just
I think
remove
if-
the whole,
Using CDOT as an example, if they walk into one of the hotels and wanna negotiate with the business guy owning the business, hey, I'm gonna rent out all your rooms for 30 days.
They would still have to have these other amenities kind of already in place for other guests. Yeah,
And it makes sense, I mean, it makes sense to still require everything in that situation, in my opinion, because they're there for over 30 days, maybe they're there for 6 months, they still need a kitchen, you're there for 6 months,
yeah.
you know? That's still your home for 6 months.
Bucci had sent me an email, kind of saying, hey, since I'm probably not gonna make it, here's my 2 comments, and one of them was on this particular subject, saying like, is this something we should probably, is it a loophole we should try to close? So.
So thanks,
She's
so
on
we'll really
board with
look
that
at
as well,
We can just remove it, I think.
and she was also on board with a communal kitchen being sufficient. What's her other comment?
Cool, thank you, and I'm sorry, Cindy, I just want to make sure we finish that, going back to your point on the minimum of 3, if
Cindy, I think I agree with you that a business center and a fitness center probably aren't needed. Kitchen facilities makes a lot of sense to me, you know, as we talked about. I don't know about conference rooms or shared kind of like space. You know, I could see having like a communal hangout area, but maybe it's not
I
necessary.
know one of the places does. They have like a room, a TV room and stuff like that.
there still could be a reasonable list, you mentioned laundry, which I don't think is on here, of like, you need to have some number of the following.
On-site, it's in,
It is, oh,
yeah.
I missed it.
attic, in-room or common area laundry facility.
Nice.
Okay.
And I think the on-site person,
Yeah.
What do you think?
now the big
Kevin
thing,
just catching up here.
No worries.
now the big thing is the lodging tax thing, which,
Yeah. Yeah,
my guess is if anybody researched, and I guess there is, I mean, the city gets, doesn't the city get notice of the lodging tax that's paid each year by the month?
I think so, but it all goes to the county.
Right, but I think there's an audit of it or a list of it. I just remember being on council that it was something you were aware of, and you were aware of who didn't pay and who did pay. It'd be interesting to see how it's being done during these,
But it's an extended stay rather than.
yeah, the way the extended stay's been happening. Because I disagree with when it's the shared amenity that those lodging taxes are going to that. My guess is none of them are getting paid because it's the honor system when you pay your lodging tax.
Right, well, and is lodging tax typically done on like a nightly basis or just like a per booking
I
basis?
think well, it's per booking, but I think the way the property owners, if I remember right, you know, Jonathan and Andy and them would know the answers to that. I don't remember how they used to do it. But I thought it was a monthly basis that the property owner had to pay then to the state, the lodging tax, and then it went to the right community. Like it went to Clear Creek County.
Right, yeah, that's a good question.
But there again, it's the honor system, so does every property owner do it? I don't know how the state even audits that or keeps up with it. So that would be something to ask to look at, because I still believe that I don't think we want to take away the lodging tax for the hotel motel, because it's supposed to go to promote the community, promote Clear Creek County through the Tourism Bureau. But when you're taking this is for employee workspace, work housing and stuff.
Right.
I don't think it should be going to paying the lodging tax.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to, you know, because if we're doing a registration or license, there's probably a fee for processing, you know, like a business license, $75. It's not a revenue generation, of course, it's just for staff time and processing and all of that. But, you know, a lot of communities do some sort of like impact type fee, and maybe it defeats the purpose to say like, we are letting you do this for short, like long-term housing, but you have to pay X per month as like an impact fee that goes to goes to our housing projects. Like maybe that's not the best idea for, like, if someone wanted to build like today a dorm style housing thing and rent it out just to employees, like I don't know that we'd want to charge them on top of that for impact fee, but I'm wondering if there's maybe some other, you know, not that we necessarily want to charge people more, but maybe like in lieu of lodging tax that we maybe don't get, some sort of impact fee for that kind of use that goes to housing projects.
Right. Yeah, and I don't even know if you have to.
In addition to the lodging tax, though,
Yeah.
right?
Right, but I could see the property owner, why wouldn't you want to separate it out?
Right.
But impact fees probably isn't the right word, but something, because, you know, it does add to our police department, the, you know, the day-to-day, it does increase their present, I mean, it should go to the city, whether, then, I don't know if we specifically have to say what it's for. Maybe the city wants to, I mean, I'm not making a choice on that, but, you know, the cops do get called to these places, there's
It's
probably
not just police, I mean,
fire
sewer and water.
department, yeah, water and sewer, well, the property owner is paying that increase of rates to water and sewer, so that affects their billing. But on just the community resources, it has an impact.
I have a question just to get on the same page. I apologize. It says, it seems like an uphill battle to start collecting lodging tax like Georgetown does. I'm not familiar with how Georgetown does. But I don't know what that means.
Separated theirs out from what I understand,
Yeah.
so they can keep theirs separate.
Well, and it was something, so if you're so it's kind of like how they're incorporated as a city. And our city status, I think, is slightly different and more difficult to, because are we considered a statutory city or a home rule?
A statutory city. What happened in Georgetown is, my firm also represents them. They passed a lodging tax, and when you pass a lodging tax, it goes away with the county lodging tax, it replaces it. So when Georgetown passed their lodging tax, there was a bit of a fight because all of that money that the county had been collecting from Georgetown businesses was now being routed to Georgetown rather than to the county. And that's what happens when it's called a displacing the tax. So you're displacing that lodging tax. So now the Georgetown tax or the Clear Creek County tax only applies to lodging anywhere that doesn't already have a municipal lodging tax approved by the voters.
Well, and with that, so let's say Clear Creek's was 4% and Georgetown passed 2%, would Clear Creek still be able to collect 2%?
I'm not positive on that. I'd have to look. There's a statute for it.
But John seemed to suggest that it would be an uphill battle for us to do a similar thing. Is that?
I'm not sure. I mean, we haven't,
So
I don't
maybe
think our
it's-
office has looked at that at
I mean, I
all.
would imagine it sounds like it was an uphill battle there, and anytime you're taking
Right.
you know, the county has been getting this money and now we're gonna keep it
Yes,
all.
obviously
Yeah, that
they're
sounds like it would be.
not happy about that situation.
But
in
now
any
we're the
case.
only ones paying it. I mean, how much lodging is there
And Empire.
in Empire and Dumont? There's the cabins up there,
Yeah, Silver Plume and that one
that's
hotel.
about it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true, and I don't know, you know, maybe that is something also to consider, I know that's a much larger policy.
Yeah, and that
question,
we'd have to
but-
wait to go to the voters, it sounded like, which
Right,
isn't. I think, I mean, it would be a poll to the businesses, the hotels in town, do they want it to go to this or that? I don't know if all of that still supports the tourism board, or would that
Well, that would be the
dissolve?
next question. What's
Yeah.
being done with that money at the county level? 'Cause that's an impact.
Well,
That's-
I
that
mean,
affects the
I just know
decision.
the old history of it, it went to the tourism bureau for promotion of Clear Creek County.
Yeah.
Your brochures, all that type of stuff, and you have a tourism board director, so goes to a lot of that, I don't think we're meaning to take away from that, but how do we recoup the cost that it's impacting Idaho Springs, the police department, the roads, everything,
Mhm.
with the increase of the population in those facilities?
right,
Well, what do, like apartment buildings, how is their impact?
They're not
mitigated?
selling something that they're doing a tax on. I mean, that's another, you know, maybe they aren't charging, I don't know, sales tax on it?
Well, I mean, like.
Nobody's
For,
reporting
well, I
it.
mean, for instance, like 4 Points
Yeah.
is going in, that's gonna be a lot of new housing, it's a lot of new people. They'll have all these exact same impacts that we're talking about. How is that currently,
That
or
goes
is there anything?
That goes into property taxes and all
yeah,
that type of
and I
stuff.
mean, they have,
That's my question.
they have a lot of, you know, for water and sewer, they have to pay tap fee per unit, whereas I would guess there's just one tap for a hotel motel. I'm fairly certain, and then like, you know, as part of development agreements and all of this, we do have kind of a, I'm gonna call it an impact fee, but essentially, I'm gonna pull up our fee schedule quick, but we kind of have like a per unit impact assessment that I think is $5,000 per unit.
Mhm.
And that's paid up front. And in the case of 4 Points, we kind of did an in lieu for that because of the improvements that they're doing on the public right of way. And so, which far exceeds what their impact assessment would have been. And so that's where, I think that's kind of where it comes in. It's kind of at the beginning of the project, when you're building it, you pay that impact fee. I don't know what it's precisely called.
I think they raised them quite a bit, didn't they? They were really low.
So I think that's the idea behind it, is to capture it that way. So the difference with an apartment complex that's built and a lodging is like a short-term lodging probably doesn't pay that because it's just one business.
Right.
Um,
This to me seems like somewhere where the extended stay and the shared amenity housing almost kind of split off a little, because for extended stay, I mean, the impact's already here, there's people living there now. And I'm not saying that means just waive it, but it's different consideration than like the new construction.
Yeah, I guess my
For shared
thought,
amenity.
and maybe I'm overthinking it, my thought is, are they paying lodging tax? And if they are, then we don't want it to be on the extended stay.
Could it be waived for the extended stay units, since they're doing specific units, or? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know if you can, I mean, those are the answers to
that's the
a
question.
lawyer of them, because you can't just take it away from,
Yeah, I mean, if the lodging tax
right?
is in effect from Clear Creek, I'm looking at the
We
statute.
can't change the term.
The only way to get rid of that lodging tax for the hotel, or, you know, to supersede that would be if the city adopted a lodging
Their
tax
own.
at the same, you know, if this, I looked, the lodging tax is 2%. So if the city passed a 2% lodging tax, then all of that 2% that's gone to the county would be replaced by the city's 2%.
I hate to say it, but the city should start looking at,
and do you know?
that's a whole different can of worms,
Is
right?
it, does it apply like per per night or is it per booking? Cause then obviously if
booking.
someone,
I believe it's
Per
per booking.
booking.
because
Yeah.
then I guess you're paying a much lower tax for these extended stay rooms because you're only booking maybe once a year.
Yeah.
So then you're only paying for one
There
booking,
might not even be a tax,
right?
you know, I mean,
But I think that would, you know, I guess if they had people in 30-day leases, you know, the property would have to pay the tax 12 times.
because a lot of times your lease isn't, like, we lease out the whole building. It's paid to us, the individuals, it's taken out of their paycheck and then we pay the hotel motel.
Yeah, without looking at this, you know, without having like the 8 different statutes to look at in front of me. I think probably the lodging tax does not apply to extended stays.
Yeah.
Because it's not a sale of a hotel accommodation if it's shorter than 30 days. I would guess that's probably what's in the statute.
So I'm overthinking it.
Well, it sounds like if it's any more complicated than that, it might be worth approaching separately.
No.
Yeah, I think that's something we could look into before our next discussion on the subject. Okay, well, I think that's a pretty good direction. Is it fair to say that if I go back, modify, you know, get with Andy and Carmen and Nick and John and modify the ordinance that was, you know, update that to get it kind of in line with what we talked about tonight? What's that?
No.
At least for this part of it, like the regulations for when they're up, like for rooms or whatever, you know, like what we put in the staff report, like at least update that, and then some of the broader, like, things maybe we didn't really discuss too much, but does that at least seem?
Are you ready from our discussion to be able to put it in ordinance?
Well, I think at least, you know, like where there's the italic stuff in the staff report now, that was based on the old ordinance. So I think at the very least, I can update these sections to say like, here's the minimum that needs to be included when you apply for register your units as extended units. You need to achieve at least these things. I think at least we could do that.
It seems we need to get that locked down before we can put it in ordinance form.
I
That's
think
why I'm
the next step
thinking.
would probably be bringing like a rough, very rough draft of what it would look like in the
And
code.
would that then replace the existing hotel motel ordinance?
I don't think we have it.
Well,
We
we
don't
don't
have
have
a hotel.
anything passed, but the idea would be it would replace the proposed one from last time.
Okay,
That didn't ultimately, the only thing I think we approved from that previously was the unstaffed hotel
Yeah,
portion,
there's no regulations
okay,
right now.
and then
other than. a-
does that apply to the licensing for the places in-house? So is can you do an ordinance where here's the ordinance, but it doesn't have all these details in it? But here's the rules to the ordinance and it has all the details.
I'm confused
So it's
by
in
it doesn't have the
definitions.
details.
I guess
but it
I'm
does have
thinking
the
is,
details.
can all this be in definitions? The definition of the hotel motel shared amenity. And it's in the ordinance, but this is it, you have to have this, you have to have communal kitchen, you have to do this, you have to do that. Do you have to write it all in an ordinance? Where if I walked in here and I'm gonna build a dorm style place, I have to look at the ordinance, or do I look at your code book that tells me how I have to?
No,
do
it's
all
the
this?
code, I mean, the ordinance puts it in the code book.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd amend the
Okay.
municipal code to probably have a section that's
Okay.
called like shared amenity housing.
Yeah,
But then we'd also amend the section on definitions to like define that.
Okay.
But in the ordinance, you would have to have that language as well, right? To say like, we're passing this language into the code, and then in the future, you'd pass a new ordinance saying we've amended these 3 things, or I guess.
And that's where the details normally are. I mean, like for like alcohol business, there's a lot of details and they're all in either local or state code. You just have to read the code.
That's what I mean, this will all,
It would
rules will
probably
end up all
be
in the code.
close in the code to the short-term rental regulations, if I had to guess.
Okay.
And I believe those are in chapter
Close as far as
21.
location. you mean?
Yeah, I mean, they're chapter 21, so it'd probably be chapter 21 stuff.
Yeah, I think so, because the definitions are in chapter
I was gonna make a
21.
great one.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. So I think, we wouldn't be at a point where we have like something that can be approved for next meeting or, but maybe I can write up, like here's the things that you need to meet in order to get a license to operate long-term going forward, and then we can workshop that, and then from there, try to put it together into a more packagable thing, review that again, and then take it to council probably.
Sounds wonderful.
And then for Nick, so this goes into effect, say we get this done and we pass this by, let's say, September 1st.
Okay.
What does that do to a business that has existing contracts with properties?
Well, it wouldn't affect their existing contracts. I mean, I would, without knowing exactly what the ordinance is gonna say generally about the implementation, I would guess there's going to be a rollout period that is far exceeding any contract in place. You wouldn't have to worry about like retroactive legislation impairing a current contract.
What if we want to take the stance that we want it to get done sooner and later, so
You could, but you can't,
isn't it up to the property owner to have the right license? And if he has to amend his contract with the business owner, whoever he's doing the business with, that, okay, these are the terms, the leases are changing.
to an extent, yeah, but,
I think it's something we need to think about it, because I
Yeah.
know there is
I think the
three-year
question
contract.
is how quick this implementation is being looked at. Like, Wheat Ridge, when we did hotels there was, I wanna say, 18 to 36 month rollout with
Okay.
constant council review of the program, so. I think that would be part of it.
So if we passed it September 1st, then we could then require everyone to get a license, right, the same before they.
Sure, yeah.
But I don't know that, could we, like, let's say there's 10 people in current long-term leases in a hotel. We couldn't, like, you'd say, hey, you have to get a license now by December 31st or something, January 1st, we probably have to work on that to say like,
Yeah, well, we couldn't kick those people out, cause we don't evict people.
yeah.
You could say you have to get a license, but current ones doesn't really apply. Is that correct, or?
I think so. I mean, let me look at what we did in Wheat Ridge. So it was passed, October of 21. Existing hotels have until January of 22 to submit an application for a hotel license. Existing hotels shall have until, so this is 7-8 months later. Existing hotels have until June 30th, 2022 to limit the duration of guest stays to less than 30 days unless the hotel has applied and received an extended stay license. So they gave some
A
time.
year and a half.
Yeah,
But, okay.
I don't think you could do an immediate
No.
hard stop. I mean, I don't think you'd want to.
But that might be able to, like, if someone does have a year lease, like, that would require them to get in compliance once that, like, year lease is up or something.
To sign a new one, I
Potentially.
guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I'm thinking about it, the year lease is between the owner, the operator of the hotel and the guest. Even if the hotel doesn't achieve compliance, that doesn't mean that we're kicking that guest out. That would still
No.
be the guest being kicked out by the owner.
Right, it's not
So I think it
ours.
would be fine, honestly.
No, I'm just curious, cause
Right.
I think implementing it sooner than later is better for the properties that aren't doing so well.
Now that I thought that out in my head, I don't actually think it would be too much of an issue because it's not actually impairing the contract between the hotel and the guest in any real way, right? I mean, you're not
I
saying
mean,
you can't have this contract.
if they're not allowed to stay there more than 30 days, isn't that currently a legal contract anyway?
Yes, but if they could be allowed to stay there for 30 days if this hotel got their shit together.
Right,
So
totally.
that's
But
kind
yeah, I
of,
mean, I guess we
Fair
could
enough.
say right now, hey, if you don't get into compliance, like, you've been violating this, or like if it did get into courts or something, That's a good one.
And then, but then down the line, and the problem with this that we've noticed is in order to know how long a guest is staying, you basically have to subpoena the hotel logs. So whoever's in charge of enforcing this is just getting stacks of books every month and has to cipher through this large stack of papers and kind of create a paper trail showing that someone is staying there for longer than 30 days. I mean, the evidentiary process of proving that is a lot more difficult than just kind of saying.
I
let
don't
people
think
stay here."
this is gonna be a big issue for the properties here. I think it's gonna be finally something that the city has some control isn't the right word, but where you're monitoring something so you don't get those bad situations like we've had.
Well, you're monitoring the people that have the extended
That
stay
own the
license.
properties.
And that, well, the ones that own properties who have extended stay licenses. And that's great and does address that. It seemed like you were more talking about people who didn't have it, or maybe have it for 5, but there's 10 rooms, you know?
Yeah, if someone says, if someone doesn't have an extended stay license
Right.
and they're permitting
There's
extended
no
stay,
recourse, yeah.
how do we prove that they're permitting
That's
extended
tough.
stay?
But
It's very difficult unless you have someone that's really dedicated to taking these shoddy hotel record books and turning that into like navigable data on Microsoft Excel.
And that's good to know, and that is good to know as a warning of enforcement of folks that aren't extended stay licensed but are doing it is tough.
Yeah.
But currently, there's no option.
Yeah.
And so having something at least gives us a path,
Yeah,
and we can improve that down the road. I'm not trying to kick the can down the road, I'm just saying like, currently, there's no option. Currently,
Yeah.
we look the other way because otherwise it means ending a lot of housing.
Right.
yeah, I hear you, this is some
Yeah.
sort of enforcement that's not there.
There's at least something.
You would hope that as long as it's not extremely expensive and incredibly difficult to implement, most people would say, all right, we'll register and be in compliance.
And if it becomes a problem, I mean, we can look into, legality of this. But if you want to be a non-extended stay hotel, you need to provide proof that you're not letting people stay extended.
Yeah, the best they can do there though is those log books, and that's when it's on us to look through. It's a big,
That's the
But then
challenge.
at least you don't have to subpoena.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the challenge that most communities face when they regulate short-term rentals, is like proving that it's being used as a short-term rental and having enough data.
Yep.
And so it's important to remember this isn't a magic bullet, but it at least gives us a tool set that we don't currently have, I guess.
no, I mean, it's more than what we have now, I agree. And I mean, you only really know how effective it is if you try it.
Yeah. But was that kind of your point, or was it?
No, that was my point. Yeah, I mean, like Wheat Ridge, right? Recently, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, they hired a guy to just do short-term rental and hotel license compliance because they did not have the staff time to adequately monitor any of that and build any case against the license holder.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a lot, but
Good to know.
I also don't know the hotel situation in this city as well as you guys. I mean, I don't know how big these hotels are, how many guests they have usually.
I think the main ones are already doing
A
a lot of
it.
this already.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's not a hugely large lift for most folks, that it becomes a huge issue for us as the city, but helps some
I think
people.
it gives the city some protection too, where we're,
I guess currently they're kind of looking the other way.
yeah, because we're letting them use it for something that they're not licensed to use.
And I mean, hopefully it's not a big lift. I don't think it will be for some of them, but it will be for others. And it's the exact ones that are already problematic, and seems likely they'll continue to be.
That's how it goes, though. That's always how it is.
Well, I think that's pretty good direction. I don't know if anyone has anything else, but if not, I can move forward with everything. Thanks, everyone.
Cool.
That was great, putting it together like that.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. I thought these were really well prepared. They're
I appreciate that.
So you're loving it, right?
Of course, yeah. No, I mean, it is good. I've learned, you know, like the first few months, I was like, man, this is a lot different, you know, cause it's just like going from a large department to like